Clemson basketball is getting ready for the postseason. Clemson football is going to start spring practice today, and Clemson baseball starts their rivalry matchup against the South Carolina Gamecocks. It's the last day of February, but there's a lot to talk about with Clemson right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, host and producer over on 105.5 and 97.5 The Roar, Clemson's flagship station. Every single week, I'm over on Mickey Plyler's show Thursday mornings. Not this Thursday morning because I'm out of town, as you can tell, still in the hotel. But thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to the show, make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and a podcast wherever you listen to those, and follow me over on X at the Morgan T Show, where I'm up to my normal antics on social media, doing my post of all things Clemson football, basketball, baseball, whatever it may be. I'm loving it and I'm here for it. And hopefully that's why you're tuning in as well. Today's show, I wanted to talk about Clemson Spring Practice. It kind of quietly snuck up on me because I'm sitting here doing podcasts about baseball and softball and basketball and all the other things that you normally would talk about in spring and in winter. And now all of a sudden, hey, we get to talk a little bit of football, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'll give you some of my early thoughts going into the spring football season. I know you are excited for it because, man, this Clemson football team, I think, is prepared to get back to the postseason, and we'll talk about what they need to do to make sure they can take the next step. And also, I wanted to get into a little bit of bracketology. I know that a lot of people have been asking me, where does Clemson stand so far? And we'll kind of dig into that. And, a lot of the stuff that I'm not super familiar with when it comes to like rankings and analytics, but we'll kind of go through one by one, and I'll tell you kind of where they stand and what they can do for the rest of the season to get the highest seed possible in the NCAA tournament. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with Clemson Baseball. I'll give you a little bit of my thoughts from the Clemson Baseball team. They start their rivalry weekend against the South Carolina Gamecocks tonight at 7 p.m. in Doug Kingsmore Stadium, then tomorrow in Fluor Field at 1:30, I think. And then Sunday over in Columbia, they'll have that game over at 5 o'clock. So big time matchup for Clemson to become to win the state championship in baseball. And talking about state championships, I don't want to kind of get this started on a bad note, but you remember that one of the big things that I think that Clemson needs to do in 2025, if you ask me, hey, Morg, what do you want with Clemson Spring Practice in 2025? What do they need to do to build towards their big accomplishments next season? And I hate to say this, but they got to get back in their winning ways against South Carolina. I do not like losing a home game against the Gamecocks. I do not like having a quarterback run all over us like they did. And so that's initially my first thought process is, hey, this team's got to do whatever they can do to get back in the winning ways against the rival South Carolina Gamecocks, because I don't like dealing with the fans. I don't like them calling in or texting me or getting on social media and telling me how trash my football team is and how we made it to the playoffs, but they deserve to be in the playoffs more than us because they're a better team because they won the head-to-head. So I hate that. I don't want that to be the case anymore. Clemson has gone on a great run. They're overall, way ahead in the overall matchup, but it seems like South Carolina Gamecock fans just do not understand that. So they need to figure it out, or we need to at least remind them that, hey, the state championship does still matter for us. Bragging rights still matter for us. And even with some of the departures that Clemson is dealing with, they're pretty much filling the gaps that they need. They've got some freshmen that are coming in that I think will be able to contribute very early. And they still have one of the most tenured returning teams in college football. I think I saw that on Yahoo or PFF where they were talking about Clemson is returning most of their starters, at least from a percentage wise with their snaps, not just starters, but snaps in general. They're returning most of their players. And so You're getting a lot of the same guys that you remember from last season, and they're a lot of the same struggles, yes, but a lot of some of the things that you can rely on. You know what you're going to get out of these guys, and so to me, if you were to say what's one thing that Clemson needs to build back to, I know it seems kind of trivial because you can still get in the playoffs even if you beat South Carolina, and I know it might be number 5 on your list out of the top 5 things that Clemson needs to do for 2025. But for me, having bragging rights is something like, just personally, okay, I'm being selfish here. I don't want to deal with the headache. You know what it is. The coworker that's the huge Gamecock fan that is just super obnoxious and pretends like the overall record means nothing, pretends like record streaks don't mean anything, pretends like what they've done in the past 10 years doesn't mean anything, pretends like their home loss record against Clemson doesn't mean anything, pretends like just overall stats in general don't mean anything, pretends like trophies don't mean anything. I mean, those are the kind of things that I want to try to get away from. And I felt like Clemson was doing a great thing with it. Dabo was on an absolute tear. And, really the past 2 home games, that's really been frustrating. Now, the thing is, Clemson doesn't get a home game this season, so can't make that game back up. So kind of have to move on from that. But Clemson has dominated really for the past 7 years or so. But South Carolina has won a couple, and so we've got to stop that trend for sure, even though it's not going to hurt the overall matchup. But really, I would say if you were to ask me in spring practice, what is the number one thing that's not so selfish, not so South Carolina centered? Really, the next big obstacle for Clemson is to get back to that national championship type level for them. They are a playoff level team. We know that this team is returning a ton of starters, so we don't have to worry so much about can they make it back to the playoffs. Did they have a lot of luck? I don't. I think they got better as the season went on. But how do they get that success? They've tasted a little bit of getting back to the playoffs. It did seem like they squeaked in towards the end. They needed help from other teams. And Clemson, I think to get to the next level, they need to be able to get to the playoffs without needing help from other teams in that sense, right? They need to be able to dominate the teams that are in front of them. Now, the season is going to be tougher. They've got road games against teams that might cause some problems. They've got LSU and South Carolina on the schedule as well. So the schedule, I think, is a little bit more difficult. Then they got to face Fran Brown and Syracuse, who, they're going to want their rents due for beating Miami and getting Clemson into the ACC championship game. And then they got SMU. They're going to want revenge against Clemson for beating them in the ACC championship. And they beat them pretty soundly at first. And then SMU started coming back, if you remember that. So SMU has some confidence. They know that they can hang. They know they had opportunities. They lost on a field goal, and so a late game field goal. So SMU is going to come in confident and want to be able to show, hey, we can hang and we can beat you. So there's a lot of teams out for Clemson. Clemson always has a target on their back, especially since the Dabo Swinney took over. They seem to be the top of the ACC. But how do they get to national championship contention again? What can they do in spring practice? Well, I think, one of my first episodes here on Locked On Clemson, by the way, this is this is February 24th or 28th. Man, what day is it? I don't know. I'm sitting here traveling around. It's February 28th, the end of February, the last show of the month. So I've done a whole month of February here on Locked On. So thank you so much for being a part of the show and helping me out. But if I could say one of the things that they need to build towards is one of the things I talked about in one of my very first episodes, which is Clemson in the running back room. We've lost Phil Maffa. Jay Haynes is coming off of a major knee injury, and the other guys really weren't used that much. And I really blame CJ Spiller for that, and not in a negative way. I'm just saying that if it were me and being just a talking head, being just a fan, I would say that I don't think they really rotated very well. If you were to self-reflect on the team last season, I think they used Phil Maffa the majority of the time. It was to the point where Jay Haynes had to do, I think, ill-advised things in the kickoff game and got himself hurt. Really. He tried to do too much in his role that he was given because he really wasn't given too much of a role in the running back room. And I don't like that. I think that they're going to have to completely switch from that now. And maybe it was just to keep them healthy, and maybe it was keep them building and getting in the weight room. But now it's the pedal to the metal and pen to paper, because they're going to have a running back by committee. A lot of people over on X are saying that they don't agree with that because they're 1,000% on Gideon Davidson. And I do want to be that hyped on Gideon Davidson. Don't get me wrong. Like, I do for sure, but he is just a true freshman. So, I know that Dabo Swinney can slow play true freshmen. I know it. The only true freshman that I remember that he didn't really slow play was Sammy Watkins. Maybe CJ Spiller, but even CJ, I want to think that he kind of was slow played as well. But that was really Tommy Bowden in that case, so can't blame him there. But I don't know. I want to say that Gideon Davidson's going to be the man, but to me, building towards a national championship team, it seems like there's a little bit of a shift, wouldn't you say? There's a little bit of a shift going back to more of a running style offenses that can be powerful. I mean, look, Notre Dame was in the national championship game. Ohio State had 2 great running backs, 3 really. They were in the national championship game and won the national championship. You could probably argue that Texas could have won the national championship if they had CJ Baxter, right? They had their top running backs. They got injured early on in the season. You could say that Clemson might have been able to go further if they had a better running game. So, the teams that beat Clemson, what did they have better than Clemson? I mean, Georgia ran all over with their brand new freshman, Nate Frazier. Louisville ran all over Clemson with their guy. I can't remember off the top of my head. But and then South Carolina ran all over Clemson with Lenore Sellers. So there's something to be said about having a strong running game. And Clemson's going to have to figure that out. And it's going to be by committee, in my opinion. And so they're going to have to really figure out who their 3 dudes are. Could it be Haynes back from injury? Could it be Adams Jr.? Could it be Easy Amume? Could it be Jarvis Green? Could it be Gideon Davidson? I don't know. There's a lot of names that are potential names in there, but we'll have to wait and see for sure. And then before I switch over to Bracketology, outside of running back, and that's where I'm going to, like, if I go, Mickey and I usually like to go to one practice. Mickey goes to a lot of them, but I like to go with Mickey to one of the practices. I would say the next thing I'm looking at is just Tom Allen, man. I want to see Tom Allen in action. I want to see what he's all about. I think, I'm the most hyped about this since Brent Venables was hired. I think that he's going to be a loud voice. He's going to be a true leader of the team. He's going to be a motivator, and he's going to be a disciplined guy. He's going to be in your face guy. The amount of rushing yards per game that they allowed and the total defense that was allowed for the team is just absolutely unacceptable for a Clemson team. A Clemson team statistically on defense should be their anchor. It should not be, middle of college football in the 60s in any major category of defense. We know that defense is really critical, and the line of scrimmage is really critical. So Clemson's got to get back to their winning ways in stopping the run game and stopping big gash plays. Those were the teams that beat up Clemson. Those were the plays that beat up Clemson. So to me, how is Tom Allen using the linebackers? What kind of rotations is he getting in on the defensive line? I'm pretty excited to see what he can bring to the table. And it's not really just about what he does personnel wise. It's just the presence, Wes Goodwin, from what I understand, is not a bad person, right? But when it comes to hiring a defensive coordinator, when it comes to getting to the national championship, when it comes to motivating dudes, and I'm telling you, I am like 5'9", 5'10". I'm an average sized dude, I guess. And you get out on the football field and you feel small when you're like me, okay? Because these dudes are huge, all right? You see them on TV and you may think that they look like you. They're the same size as you. If you go run to the Paul after the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm almost 40 years old here, and I'm an average sized guy. I get out on the football field, I get on the sideline for the ACC championship game, and I feel tiny compared to the rest of the team. And these guys are like 20 years old, So you've got to be able to have a presence about you that's able to motivate, discipline, and get massive human beings on the same page, working together and focused on a single vision, and doing their individual roles, but also the individual roles to a point of helping the entire team. I would say that's where Clemson's defense struggled a lot too, is you had a couple of times in critical moments where players were out of position or players weren't even on the field. So rotation and the right players getting on the field at the right time and being in the right position at the right time. Brent Venables was so focused on, the small things. So I'm just curious to how Tom Allen does his, how he coaches defense. And so not so much about the lineup, because I understand Clemson and the lineup. And so I know that they're returning a lot of guys. I know there's gaps to fill on the edge. I know there's some new guys on the edge. I know there's probably going to be new guys at safety, but overall, it's really two things for me going into the season. Well, I said three things, so let me tell you my three things. Get back to beating South Carolina. My thumbs up came up on the screen. Get back to beating South Carolina. Get back to your defense the way it is, and find a running back rotation or a superstar that's going to dominate college football for sure. All right, when it comes up next, we're going to talk a little bit about Clemson Bracketology right after this. Life moves fast, and especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. This gives you peace of mind, because me being a parent, I have a 10-year-old, I want to make sure my family is financially protected no matter what happens to me. Fabric gives me that peace of mind. And, I'm flying now. So, my new profession is a little bit different, and it makes me a little bit nervous sometimes. I got to be honest, but with Fabric, gives me that peace of mind. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies are issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, we're back. Segment number 2, going to talk about a little bit Clemson Bracketology. And I'm pretty excited about it because, Clemson is doing great at the end of the season. And we really wanted to, I've been talking about Clemson basketball all week and all February, really. And they're kind of put themselves in a position to just really sweep the rest of the season and have a great seed in the ACC tournament, as we talked about yesterday. And then in the NCAA tournament, that's what we're talking about now. So where are the Tigers? Let's take a look and zoom out. Clemson's now 23-5 overall. They're 15-2 in the ACC. They're tied for Louisville for second, one game behind Duke at 16-1. That Notre Dame win, as you remember, locked out in their double bye in the ACC tournament. So the last 3 games could possibly get them even better. The big thing, what we've talked about all week, is can Duke and Louisville stumble and Clemson keeps winning? For me, it's just keep winning. If they keep winning and one of these teams stumble, well, Clemson jumps into the number 1 or number 2 seed. They're definitely in the top 4 seed of the ACC tournament, but they get into the number 1 or number 2 seed. So the ACC top 6 right now, you've got Duke at 6-1, Louisville and Clemson at 5-2, SMU at 12-5, Wake Forest and North Carolina at 11-6. And in the net rankings, Clemson holds strong at 23. Behind Duke at number 2 in the ACC. They're just behind Duke, and they're actually ahead of Louisville in the net rankings at 26. SMU's 42, and the Tar Heels are 45. So the Tigers, they're 4-2 in quad one, which I'm told quad one is, the games you got to win. That's for sure. You definitely want to win. They're 7-2 in quad two. They're 7-1 in quad three, and they're 5-0 in quad four. And let me tell you, that is a tournament contender. That's for sure. And this is probably the best team Brad Brownell has ever had. When it comes to record and ability to win games in all quads and have typically you see Clemson have really good a record in one of the quads or two of the quads, but not all four of them like they have this year, and it's pretty awesome to see. So 3 games to go. They're all ACC matchups. Saturday they're going to play Virginia, 14-4 overall, 7-10 in the ACC. They're ranked 97 in the net. A win there is going to be a quad 2 victory. And then they go on to March 5th, where they're going to play Boston College. They're going to be 12-16, and they're 4-13 in the ACC. Their net is 199th. So that's a quad 3 road win. Not the best team in the country, that's for sure. But hey, you'll take a quad 3 road win for sure. March 8th, senior day. And that's the last game of the regular season, and they play at home against Virginia Tech. They're 12-6, 7-10 in the ACC. They're 156th in the net, and that is a quad 4. That'd be quad 4 win in Littlejohn. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's has to do with just one being road and one being home. Sweep those. If you read it out loud, I mean, on paper, it seems like Clemson definitely has a great chance to sweep those. They'll be 26-5, 18-2. Wow. 18-2 in the ACC. I know I wrote that down on my notes, but just saying it out loud, I mean, how many hardcore Clemson basketball fans do we have listening to this podcast and watching the YouTube channel and listening on 105.5 The Roar and just thinking to themselves, this is nuts, man. I mean, a program record for regular season wins, plus it could shake up if Louisville or Duke win. They definitely have, they don't have any huge resume builders on their personal schedule unless other teams win or lose, excuse me, then they could be even higher. But what I will say is they have some resume killers. That's for sure. They cannot slip up. I mean, if you listen to my show, you know that I'm saying this on repeat. Do not slip up. Okay. I don't want to jinx anything, but man. All right. So let's talk about March Madness. Bracketology is a big thing. Clemson, to me, when I'm reading things across the board, it seems like that they're up from a 7 seed. I know for like 2 weeks we talked about they're going to be a 7 seed. They're not going to be anything higher than a 7 seed. But as I'm reading it now, it looks like they've kind of jumped up a little bit to a 5 seed. They could be facing off against a number 12 or something like that, starting out the bracket. And then, if they're higher up, they could be on the side where they're having to play against the number 1 at the end of the bracket. So a few of the places out there on ESPN, Joe Lunardi has Clemson possibly playing UC San Diego, then Purdue, then Florida. And then USA Today has Clemson going against Drake, and then Arizona, and then Florida. So 2 there against Florida. And then some have them possibly being against Duke later on. And actually a few of them have against Duke, and some against Missouri, some against Alabama. So really, they're really kind of all over the place with who they could end up playing or being a part of the bracket. I don't know really where. I'm not a huge basketball fan out of Clemson basketball, so you'll have to help me out when it comes to who would you rather them play against. I mean, if you're just listing those teams, I'd rather play the team you've already beaten in a Duke team in a lot of ways, but maybe a Florida team is a better team. I'm not really sure. Maybe their bracket would be better. Let me know what you think in the comments. Message me over on X at the Morgan T Show. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. If you're a college basketball junkie, tell me where you think, what bracket they're going to get into and where you think they could shake out. At the end of the day, it's pretty cool to be in a 5 seed To me, I'll take it all day. If they continue to win and they get into the ACC tournament and they win out there, and they're the ACC tournament champions, I mean, you got to think they're going to be a top 4 team at that point. And then you really have a good matchup to get a couple of games into it. And I'll tell you, when it comes to brackets, here's my disclaimer. You may see me on the radio or listen to me on the radio or see me post on social media that Clemson loses their first round in the bracket. And I typically do that because my dad has always convinced me that you don't jinx your own team and you don't bet with your heart. So while I would love to pick Clemson to go all the way and go to the Final Four and win the national championship in basketball, a lot of times I do pick Clemson to lose the first game just because I want to be the anti-jinx. I do not want to give them too much hope. I don't want to cause for any kind of issues. And so a lot of times I do not pick them to go very far in my brackets. So if you see my brackets that come out, do not get all over me about the fact that I don't have Clemson going very far. And a lot of it probably too is because I'm a little bit fickle. I'm a Clemson basketball fan that's been around. And I graduated undergrad in 2009. I got my MBA in 2018. And I'm telling you, you never know, and you don't want to jinx your own team. That's for sure. All right, so coming up next, we're going to finish out the show with a little bit of talk of Clemson Baseball versus the South Carolina Gamecocks. I know you're excited about it. Huge rivalry matchup, and we'll wrap up real quick after this. All right, March basketball is here, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, it's easy, and it keeps the game, every game, exciting. This week, you can pick one of your favorite NBA stars, and you can pick if you want points or rebounds. It's also quick and easy. You can actually get in your picks in 60 seconds, and the payouts are fast and fun. And 15 minutes, you can get your money back. And I love Taco Tuesdays. I've mentioned these. You can get discounted player projections and get even more value. Go ahead and download the app today and use code Locked On College to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, we're going to finish out the show here talking about Clemson Baseball and their matchup coming up against the South Carolina Gamecocks this weekend. I know you are excited about it. I know you're ready for the big matchup, the annual Palmetto Series. I don't know if I'm really supposed to call it that because I know a lot of people get really upset about calling it that, but can the number 7 Tigers beat the South Carolina Gamecocks? I think that there's a few things that we can talk about. The first question is, can they take down undefeated South Carolina? Clemson enters in 7-1. They're ranked 7th in Baseball America and in perfect game, but South Carolina coming in 9-0 under new head coach, and they're batting .304, and the team ERA is .225. So Clemson's batting .312 with a .441 on-base percentage and 9 runs per game. Clemson definitely has offensive firepower. To me, we've talked about it. They can beat you. Well, we saw they're going to beat you small ball most of the time, and get on base and steal bases and get around and running runners in scoring position. But we've also seen that against Winthrop, they somehow can knock a bunch of home runs around. So it'd be interesting to see how things shake out. When I looked at the website, Clemson came out with a media day guide, and it looks like Friday, Aiden Kanak versus Matthew Becker. So Friday meaning today, this evening. My goal is to fly, so I'm gonna be flying. Yesterday I flew to Tallahassee, to Hilton Head in Tallahassee. Today I'm gonna go somewhere in Mississippi and come back. I'm hoping to get back, and I'll probably be listening to the game on the way back from Atlanta. I'm gonna come home back to Greenville, and I'll probably be listening on 105.5 The Roar and Don and Tim, and Aiden Kanak's going to be pitching tonight. Saturday is going to be Ethan Darden, which those two, really no confusion there. And then Justin Legernick, I believe, is going to be Sunday. So you really have a lot of confidence in those three guys. Don't know who South Carolina is going to bring up on Sunday. It's going to be Jake McCoy on Saturday and then Matthew Becker on tonight. So that's kind of the matchup. Players to look for in this series, key players for South Carolina, I have down Dominic Listy. I think if you're a Clemson fan right now, he's number one on everybody's list. I mean, 462 average, 615 on base percentage. He is an offensive machine, the Terminator, 13 RBIs already just early on in the season. Another transfer, Josh Pano, 370, 486 on base percentage, 11 RBIs, another key run producer there. And then Tristan McGladdy. I know a lot of people are like, who is this guy? What is he doing in the lineup? 400 average and 4 steals. So power combo right there. On South Carolina's side of things, you got Ethan Petrie, 452 average, 2 home runs. Very dangerous. You got to watch out for him. And then Nathan Hall and Noah Noraki, a former Clemson baseball player. He's batting 350. Nathan Hall is batting 433. And those two former Tigers are going to, be ones that, you don't really want to see for sure. The X factor for me is Clemson's pitching staff. How well can their starters do? How deep can they get into the innings? And then what can the bullpen do? I have a lot of confidence in them for sure. To me, I think that Clemson is set up well to be able to win 2 out of these 3, but really they have to prove it, and it's not going to be easy for sure. Clemson has won 7 out of the last 10, and can they continue this? We'll have to wait and see. This is definitely a resume building series for them, and it's going to be extremely, extremely heated. That's what I love about college baseball. When you watch professional baseball, a lot of times you don't really feel like that the guys are as into it every single game. Maybe it's just because they play so many games, but to me, when you watch Clemson baseball, when you watch college baseball in general, it seems like that there are a ton of guys that are just really, really into it, and every game matters, and every game and every hit means something, and they're just, at any moment gonna bust out of the dugout and lose their mind, because they want to win these games really bad. So that's one thing I really like about baseball, is that all the players seem to really take it serious, and they care about their wins and losses, no matter who the opponent is. Well, I appreciate everyone being a part of the show. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Schad and Andy Patton. Don't wait for March. Hey, by the way, March is tomorrow. To be the most informed college basketball fan, find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, that's it. I'm wrapping up my first month here on Locked On Clemson. Thank you so much for supporting me over on podcast and YouTube and X, as well at the Morgan T Show. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.